So there have been a lot of player and team options accepted within this whole season, so I figured I would review all of them and give grades to each the player and the team on the options accepted up until Tuesday, June 26th. Carmelo Anthony has accepted his $28 million player option. Let's start with my grade for Carmelo. Carmelo is at best going to get 15 million on the open market, and he got nearly double that in this option. While he could opt out to go get a ring, he's still just 34 years old and has at least 3 or 4 more years to get a ring. I'd give this an A plus for Carmelo. Now on to the Thunder. The Thunder would only have $12 million to spend if Melo opted out of his deal. Carmelo is still a solid scorer who can give you 15 in a night, and while he isn't worth 20 million, let alone close to 30, he's still an okay player who can help the Thunder win. Still though, this is an awful deal for the Thunder, and I would give it a D+. Wesley Matthews has opted into his $18.6 million player option. Let's start with Wesley Matthews. Matthews is still a productive player as a solid 3-and-D wing. On the open market, he'd probably get around 7 or 8 million, so the almost 20 he's getting now is awesome. I would give this an A+ for Wesley Matthews. And now on to the Dallas Mavericks. Matthews isn't a bad player by any means, but with the Mavs wanting to go after DeMarcus Cousins and other big-name free agents, they need the money. They still have 24 million to spend, so it's not hurting them that much, but they could have around 42 million to spend if Matthews opted out of his deal. The Mavs are trying to compete next season, and Matthews will help with that. So I would give this deal a C for the Mavericks. Wilson Chandler has opted into his $12.8 million player option. Let's start with Chandler on this one. Chandler's a pretty good 3-and-D wing and would likely get around $8 million on the open market. He is 31, however, and if he has a poor year next year, he could lose out on a lot of money. It might have been a smarter move to opt out of this deal and sign a long-term deal with more guaranteed money total. Still, though, I'd give this deal an A- for Chandler. Now, the Nuggets are re-signing Nikola Jokic to a max deal soon, and they also have Will Barton as a free agent. The extra 13 million would have helped tons, as after the summer they won't have any cap space to spend for a while. However, Chandler is going to help them a lot, and they don't have another dependable wing, as Michael Porter is often injured, and he's really their only backup wing. And also, Chandler can help mentor Porter. I'd give this deal a B- for the Nuggets. Austin Rivers has accepted his $12.7 million player option. Let's start with Rivers. Austin Rivers is a solid bench player and could probably get around $6 to $10 million on the open market, but not over $10 million. He's still relatively young at 25 and is likely going to get a long-term deal in next summer, regardless of his play next year. I would give this deal an A for him. Now on to the Clippers. Rivers is helping the Clippers win, but if he opted out, they could have about $24.5 million as long as DeAndre Jordan also opts out of his deal. That would be enough to sign a pretty quality player and then re-sign Jordan on bird rights. The Clippers don't need Rivers anyway, as they just drafted 2 guards who are probably going to be there for a long time. I'd give this a C- for the Clippers. Jeremy Lin opted into his $12.5 million player option. Let's start with Lin. Lin is a pretty good backup on a playoff team and will likely be the 6th man on the Nets next year, but he's coming off of a season-ending injury. He'd probably get a 1-year, $6 or $7 million prove-it deal on the open market. Now, I would give this deal an A+ for him, as he can also help out his value while on this 1-year deal. Now on to the Nets. The Nets don't really need Lin anymore after the emergence of Spencer Dinwiddie. The Nets will finally have their first-round pick this year and should absolutely try to lose. Lin will probably add a few wins to their total, which might drop them from a top 3 pick to a top 6 pick. I would give this a C for the Nets. Shumpert has opted into his $11 million player option. Let's start with Shumpert. Shumpert didn't play a single minute on the Kings and would have probably got the minimum or just a bit above the minimum on the open market. I would give this deal an A+ for Shumpert. Now on to the Kings. The Kings aren't going to be active in free agency, and they have $25 million to spend anyway. Shumpert isn't doing any harm to the team, and he's probably just mentoring the young guys and helping them out. I'd give this deal a B for the Kings. Danny Green has opted into his $10 million player option. Now, just 2 summers ago, people expected Green to opt out of his deal and get more money on the open market, but those times are long gone. Green is still a pretty good 3-and-D guy and can play about 20 minutes per game, but he'd probably get around $8 million on the open market. I would give this deal an A- for Green. Now for the Spurs. The Spurs have about $10 million to spend now that Green opted into his deal. If they keep Kawhi, they are probably a contending team, and Green does help out with that. However, if Green had opted out, they would have nearly $20 million, which could get them one of the better free agents on the market. I'd give this deal a C for the Spurs. Kosta Koufos has opted into his $8.7 million contract. Koufos is only 29 years old, but he isn't that good, and at best, he's going to get 10 or 15 minutes a game on a playoff team next year. On the open market, I'd say he'd get somewhere around $5 million or maybe $4 million. I would give this deal an A for Koufos. Now on to the Kings. Similarly to Shumpert, it really doesn't matter that he accepted his option. Of course, they have a lot of cap space, but they're probably not going to use much. Unlike Shumpert, Koufos actually does play, and he's probably helping the young guys as well. I would give this deal a B+ for the Kings. Corey Joseph has opted into his $7.9 million player option. Joseph is a solid bench player and can be a backup point guard on a playoff team. He's young and is sure to get a long-term deal next offseason. He'd probably get around 6 or 7 million on the open market, so I'd give this deal an A for Joseph. Now the Pacers did just draft a point guard, so Joseph might not play that much for them. He's still a quality bench piece, as I said, so it's not the worst that he opted in, but if he opted out, the Pacers would have close to $20 million, assuming Thaddeus Young accepts his player option, which would give them enough to sign a quality free agent. I'd give this deal a B for the Pacers. Darrell Arthur accepted his $7.4 million player option. Arthur is 30 years old and at this point barely even a bench player. It's hard to say if he'd even get a contract on the open market, and if so, it'd be for the minimum. I'd give this deal an A+ for Arthur. Like I said for Chandler's deal, the Nuggets need cap space, and this really hurts them. Arthur didn't play a single minute for them last year. I would give this deal a D+ for the Nuggets. Dwayne Dedmon has opted into his $7.2 million player option. Dedmon is a solid backup center for a playoff team, and he'd probably get around $4 or $5 million on the open market. I'd give this deal an A- for Dedmon. The Hawks aren't competing at all, so they aren't using their cap space, so this deal really doesn't hurt them. Dedmon should be a good pick-and-roll partner with Trae Young, and I'd give this deal an A- for the Hawks. Milos Teodosic has accepted his $6.3 million player option. Teodosic is a solid starting point guard and could probably get around $5 million on the open market. He's already 31 though, and if he has a poor year next year, he won't get much money. He might have wanted to opt out and sign a long-term deal, but still the 6.3 is pretty nice. I'd give this deal an A- for Teodosic. Now the Clippers are trying to compete, and Teodosic is certainly helping them do that. The Clippers do have a lot of guards, but I think Teodosic is probably the second best one right now. I'd give this deal a B+ for the Clippers. Wesley Johnson had opted into his $6.1 million player option. Wesley Johnson barely has a place in the NBA anymore, and he'd probably get a 1-year minimum dollar deal on the open market. I'd give this deal an A+ for Johnson. As for the Clippers, they need their cap space, and this hurts them a lot. Johnson isn't doing much on their team to help them win. I'd give this deal a C- for the Clippers. Jason Smith has opted into his $5.5 million player option. Jason Smith would probably get around $3 million on the open market. This is a pretty good deal for him, and I'd give it an A. The Wizards are already over the cap by $24 million, and they're dangerously close to the luxury tax. I would give this deal a C+ for the Wizards. Mike Muscala has accepted his $5 million player option. Muscala is an okay backup center, and could probably get around 3 or 4 million on the open market. I'd give this deal an A- for him. Similarly to Dedmon, Muscala isn't adding any wins to the Hawks, and he's a solid pick-and-roll partner for Trae Young. I'd give this deal a B plus for the Hawks. Ron Baker has opted into his $4.5 million player option. Ron Baker is a borderline bench player, and he'd probably get the minimum on the open market. I would give this deal an A for Baker. The Knicks aren't competing and don't need the cap space, and Baker is just helping Ntilikina shoot. I'd give this deal a B plus for the Knicks. Jody Meeks has opted into his $3.4 million player option. Jody Meeks was brought in last summer to be the sixth man of the Wizards, but he's very far from that. He's an okay bench player at this point, and he's probably only going to get about $2 million on the open market. I'd give this deal a B for Meeks. Like I said, Meeks is barely helping the Wizards win, and he's just pushing them closer and closer to that luxury tax threshold. I would give this deal a D for the Wizards. The Sixers have accepted Richaun Holmes' $1.6 million team option. Holmes is a quality backup center and could probably get around $5 million on the open market. Staying in Philadelphia is a good thing for him, however. I'd give this deal a B for Holmes. The Sixers, of course, are competing, and Holmes is certainly helping them. He's much cheaper than a replacement player of his caliber. I'd give this deal an A for the Sixers. The Sixers have also accepted TJ McConnell's $1.6 million team option. McConnell is a solid backup point guard for a playoff team, and on the open market could probably get around $6 million. Like Holmes, staying in Philadelphia is a good move. I'd give this deal a B for McConnell. Once again, the Sixers are competing, and McConnell certainly helps with that, especially while Fultz is injured or recovering or whatever is happening with him. McConnell is a fan favorite as well, and for only $1.6 million, it'd be very dumb to let him go. I'd give this deal an A plus for the Sixers. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. Those are my thoughts and grades on each player and team option that has been accepted so far. Leave a like if you've enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and comment down below what you think of these options.